whole 110 floors, that would represent 110 seconds, or 100 seconds too many. If you assume that, well, yeah, but the one hit on the 96th floor, so we're only talking about collapse from the 96th floor, that would still be 96 seconds if you're assuming a second per collapse per floor. Now, an engineer in California suggests that a second is too high, that it may have only taken a half a second in order for the mass, the weight of the upper floors to overcome the resistance of the lower floors, and suggests that a half a second. Well, if you take a half a second into 96 floors, then you get 48 seconds it should have taken for the building to fall. Yet they only fell in 8 to 10 seconds, far too fast.
Stephen Jones says, not so fast.
They're sticking with this one hypothesis. It's almost they have blinders on. It's got to be fires and damage.
Jones is a 20-year physics professor at BYU.
Symmetrically now, it doesn't topple over as you might expect from what we call the second law of thermodynamics. It comes straight down. This is the goal of prepositioned explosives in a controlled demolition.
Nelle demolizioni controllate, gli esplosivi vanno piazzati con molta cura e dopo lunghi calcoli. Bisogna fare in modo che le cariche piazzate alla base dei piloni centrali, esplodendo un istante prima delle altre, portino con sé il resto della struttura senza danneggiare gli edifici circostanti. Per garantire che questo accada, le esplosioni alla base devono essere molto potenti e di solito generano un calore tale che nel punto in cui erano conficcati i piloni si vengono a formare delle vere e proprie pozze di acciaio fuso, mentre le macerie tutte intorno continuano a ribollire per lungo tempo. Questo invece non dovrebbe accadere nel caso che un edificio crolli per un semplice cedimento strutturale. Questa immagine termografica, scattata dal satellite 5 giorni dopo i crolli delle torri, ritrae la zona del World Trade Center Plaza. I punti più caldi sono proprio alla base delle 3 torri crollate. Queste immagini di New York sono state riprese dallo shuttle 2 settimane dopo i crolli. In un cielo completamente terso si vede chiaramente la lunga nuvola di fumo che per molte settimane ha continuato a fuoriuscire dalle macerie delle torri crollate.
Today is November 1st. And if you think about it, the smoke at this very moment is still rising out of the World Trade Center.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was a core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it's just a bright, bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that, Chief? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing. Great.
Come può essere questo il risultato di un semplice crollo passivo? David Ray Griffin, noto teologo e scrittore americano, è l'autore del libro Commissione 11 settembre, distorsioni e omissioni, che ha letteralmente smontato la tesi ufficiale del governo americano. In questa conferenza all'Università del Wisconsin, Griffin elenca i motivi principali per cui ritiene che le torri non possano essere crollate da sole, ma siano invece state demolite con l'uso di esplosivi.
For example, the buildings collapsed straight down and at virtually free fall speed, as in controlled demolitions. And then the rubble smoldered for months afterwards. With regard to the Twin Towers in particular, many people in the building said that they felt or heard explosions. Virtually all the concrete of these enormous structures was pulverized into very fine dust. Try this. Get a piece of concrete and drop it a little over 1,000 feet and see if it pulverizes into very fine dust. It won't happen. Much of this dust, along with steel and aluminum, was blown out horizontally from the buildings several hundred feet. And pools of molten steel were found beneath the rubble. These and even more effects point to the existence of very powerful, precisely placed explosives. In any case, when we look at all these features of the collapses, the idea that they could have been caused by the impact of the airplanes plus the resulting fires is ridiculous. This is even clearer with regard to building number 7, which wasn't hit by any airplane, and yet it came down about 5:30 that afternoon. Its collapse remains so impossible to explain, except as controlled demolition, that the 9/11 Commission report did not even mention it, as if the collapse of a 47-story building was not worthy of comment.
Il crollo del World Trade Center 7, avvenuto nel pomeriggio, rappresenta l'unico caso nella storia in cui un moderno edificio in acciaio sia crollato a causa di un semplice incendio. Stupisce ancora di più che ciò sia avvenuto, esattamente come per le torri, con assoluta precisione, in perfetta verticale, e senza apportare nessun danno consistente agli edifici circostanti. La migliore squadra di demolizioni controllate difficilmente avrebbe potuto ottenere un risultato migliore lavorando e calcolando le cadute per intere settimane. Ma l'ostacolo più grosso di tutti per accettare la tesi dei crolli strutturali è una notevole quantità di testimonianze, poliziotti, pompieri, giornalisti e comuni passanti, che hanno sentito o hanno vissuto in prima persona una lunga serie di esplosioni alla base delle torri, qualche secondo prima o durante i crolli stessi.
Everybody talks about what the new Trade Center is going to look like, but I'm telling you right now, the old Trade Center was the most beautiful thing in the world.
For 7 years, 37-year-old Philip Morelli was a construction worker inside the Trade Center. The Queens native says he loved his job at the Twin Towers. At 8:30, he says he was headed to level B4 in Tower 1, 4 stories below ground.
I go downstairs, the foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight corridor building in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor, and that's when everything started happening. I was racing, I was going towards the bathroom. All of a sudden, I opened the door, I didn't know it was a bathroom, and all of a sudden a big impact happened again, and all the ceiling tile was falling down, the light fixtures were falling, swinging out of the ceiling. I mean, I know of people that got killed in the basement. I know of people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face.
There were 2 or 3 similar huge explosions, and the building literally shook. You literally shook at the base of this building.
Just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt,
we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse.
And to me, it sounded like an explosion. Then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosion.
We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
Trying to get some of the people out, then there was those secondary explosions and then the subsequent collapses.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
All of a sudden, it started like it sounded like gunfire. You know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact